What's interesting about video game music, depending on any game you play, it's complementary, right? It has to be complementary to your gameplay. Good music with a good game, that's what makes it awesome.
Hey everyone, I am Tiffany Smith and welcome to a brand new Boss Hobbies on IGN in partnership with Bai Boost. In today's episode, we are talking to the queen of electronic music, TOKiMONSTA. She's been nominated for a Grammy, had her music featured in video games, including a remix in Ghost of Tsushima, and overcame a rare illness that nearly ended her career. We're gonna find out how she kept her boss business in check in the face of such adversity. And you guys are gonna wanna stick around because one lucky viewer is going home with a Pioneer DJ channel controller, a pair of Beats by Dre headphones, and a Bai Boost product pack. Plus, we have $50 IGN store gift cards for 5 additional winners. All of that awesomeness is courtesy of our friends at Bai Boost. So first, thank you so much, Toki, for taking the time to chat with us today. I'm so excited to hear about your whole career, your whole journey, your whole boss life.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's nice to have an excuse to get out.
So let's jump right in kind of from the beginning. So I know that you are actually a classically trained pianist. So how do you go from that to doing electronic music?
Yeah, that ended up being my first introduction into music, was classical piano lessons put onto me by my mother. But yeah, 100%. I actually really think that that background allowed me to stand apart in a very specific way compared to some of my peers. I like looking at all my songs like this hero's journey where there's like the beginning, the middle, the apex, the end, and how it kind of develops and goes further. So yeah, I don't know. I like taking that part of classical music and putting that into my music, so all my songs are more like a journey.
Why electronic music?
Well, it's interesting because I've always loved electronic music since I first was introduced to it when I was like really young. I got into house music and drum and bass, but really my first love is hip hop and rap and R&B, and you know, like the first things that I bought as a kid was Gangsta's Paradise and TLC, Chasing Waterfalls. Those are my roots. And I also started off as a producer making rap beats. When I look at my music, I would almost say I can still call it hip hop, but I can also call it electronic. So it's somewhere in between, this like meld, crazy jungle thing.
How did you feel when you first performed in front of a crowd?
The very first performance was not so good. They weren't set up for me. I had to put all my equipment on top of turntables, and there were probably 10 people in the room, and I'm not sure if they really liked it, but now I could say I'm a lot better than that. You know? Everyone, I'm a lot better than that. Yeah.
If you could give yourself any advice, like if you could go back in time and tell yourself at that performance something to know, what would it be?
Practice more. And then the second thing is, that's more for moral support, is don't worry if people don't understand yet.
Well, and kind of jumping off of that, where you're like, don't worry if people don't get it, because they will eventually. You got nominated for a Grammy for the music that you're doing. How did that feel, where it's like getting that kind of recognition?
What's great is it's an accolade that I never asked for. I wasn't like, and I know a lot of musicians, some people are like, I gotta get that Grammy, I gotta get that Grammy, and I've never been that way. I just assumed, not that I wouldn't get it, but it just wasn't even on my radar. I'm just grateful to be making music, and this is good enough for me, and that's fine. But the genesis of this album came from, you know, me going through a really major, life-affirming, life-scary medical emergency, and this album is just the sign of hope and success and making it through, and that just makes it even more wonderful. So whenever I'm down, I always look back and be like, I made it through that and got to this point. I always have the fuel to allow me to go further.
So you actually worked in the gaming industry. Tell me a little bit about that.
It was my first real out of college job. I worked for a video game producer. I got to enter this world, and first of all, if I wasn't doing music, I would be back in that world 100%. That community, the work environment was really fun for me. I mean, could literally just play video games during lunch. I loved every minute of it. It was so fun. You know, I got to go test the games, play it with other people. For the most part, you know, I was helping producers. Just to have that kind of come full circle is pretty amazing.
So tell me about how Ghost of Tsushima came into your experience in your career doing that song remix.
I grew up listening to video games. Video game music is really influential on me. They came and they contacted me, and I said yes, and then we just moved from there.
So is it different for you doing music for video games versus, you know, the regular music that you're doing?
In this particular instance, it was not too different because they wanted me to remix their score, right? And I think what was different is the kind of score I got to work with. It was very orchestral, lots of Japanese instruments and things like that. So it was just really an honor to be a part of it, and it was a really, very well-reviewed game. It just felt nice to show up on anyone's radar to be a part of that project.
What does it do for you listening to video game music? What do you take from that for your music?
What's interesting about video game music, depending on any game you play, it's complementary, right? It has to be complementary to your gameplay. It can't be too distracting. It can't be too much this way or that way. The sound has to fit the aesthetic of the game, and it's a fair balance, and it's really collaborative. So any kind of scoring situation is super fascinating for me because it's the sum of the parts that make the gaming experience good. It's good music with a good game. That's what makes it awesome.
Do you still have time in your everyday life to game just for fun?
Yes, I do. You know what it is? I really make time for it. I'm playing Dragon Ball FighterZ and Mario Kart, social games, because those are the ways that you can connect with your friends. So the way that I game is very specific. I basically go through video games like all my other hobbies, reading books, painting, even making music in binged phases. So I'll have one full month where I'm just obsessed with making music, and I'll hit a roadblock. I won't feel inspired anymore. Obviously that's my career, so it's really disappointing when that happens. But what I will do then is pick up my Switch and play games, and maybe obsessively for the next month. And by the time I'm done with that, I'm suddenly refreshed, re-inspired, excited to get back into music again. So that's kind of how I do it. I know that sounds like a crazy person, but that really works for me.
What's the last game that you played like that?
Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, which was ported to the Switch, and I binged it in a week. I stayed up till 5 in the morning. That game is hard. Universally, everyone can recognize that game is really hard.
Yeah. So you've done so many things and you're accomplishing so much in your career. At what point were you like, I think I'm gonna open up my own record label?
I first started the label by just releasing my own music, and then eventually I started taking on new artists, and it's so rewarding in a different way than being a musician, because I love music, I love sharing music, and aside from being maybe a radio DJ or something like that, you can be a label owner, and that's the best way for me to find music from artists and share it with the world, but also a way for me to give back to artists, because at the end of the day, this label is not a big money-making venture for me. It's not something I do in that way. It's something that I use to help raise up artists that would not have their music heard any other way. I just like being able to mentor the artists that are on my label, and that's really important to me.
So now that you are a boss, you have, artists under you, working with you, other employees as well. Do you ever feel like, oh man, there's moments sometimes where you have to boost the vibe? How do you do that?
Yeah, I definitely take on that responsibility of being the vibe booster. I would say it would be CEO/vibe booster.
I like it.
I think so. Yeah, I should put that on my Instagram. Yeah. It's really important that everyone that's on your team feels heard, that all your artists feel heard, because everyone wants the best from everything. But sometimes there are chasms that happen, and if you just work on communication, almost anything can be resolved. Nothing feels better than my artist being like, thank you. I'm so happy with how this album came out. Thank you so much for hearing me, and it's a dream, etc. It just warms my heart, and it's something that making music can't give me. It's different,
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Yeah, thank you.
From the bottom of my heart, I feel so inspired. I'm like, I'm gonna go out and I can take on anything. From hearing your story, you're such an inspiration. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
The moment has arrived. It is time for our giveaway. All you have to do is head over to buygiveaway.ign.com, enter your info, and you could be one of 5 lucky winners getting a $50 IGN store gift card. Or you could be our grand prize winner getting a Pioneer DJ channel controller plus a pair of Beats by Dre headphones. But that's not all, because the folks over at Bai Boost are hooking you up with a Bai Boost product pack as well. So you'll have all the focus and energy you need to live your life like a boss. All right, well, that's it. We will see you guys on the next Boss Hobbies.